All right, welcome to class. Today we are going to use properties of algebra to justify algebraic two-column proofs. The materials you need your new notes page that you picked up this morning. You need your calculator. Grab those off the wall if you have not already. And you need a pencil or pen, something to write with. Your practice for the day is your Delta Math assignment. Then, don't forget, you have a test on Wednesday. If you have not already, go ahead and pause the video and take a moment to answer your 2 warm-up questions. All right, now that you have taken time to solve the 2 warm-up questions, it says solve for x. Be ready to describe every step that you take to solve the problem. So the first problem we're going to start with this one on the left. So what you do first is we have 2 times x plus 3 equals 8. Step 1 is you're going to distribute that 2 inside the parentheses. That's going to give you 2x plus 6 equals 8. Next, we're going to subtract 6 from both sides. That's going to give me 2x equals 2. Then we're going to divide by 2 on both sides, and that gives me x equals 1. Now we'll move over here to the right side. On this right side, we have a fraction. So the first thing we're going to need to do is to multiply both sides by 5. Over here, the 5s are going to cancel out, and we are left with 2x plus 6 equals 10. Then we're going to subtract 6 on both sides. That gives me 2x equals 4. Then we're going to divide by 2, and that gives me x equals 2. If you have any questions, please leave a private comment on Google Classroom so that I can get back to you. Now that we're finished with the warm-up, we're going to move into today's notes. So if you move into your packet, you will notice this is your first page. The properties of algebra. This is like a cheat sheet for an example of what all of these things are. We are going to be talking about these. We have the addition property, the subtraction property, multiplication property, the division property. We have the substitution property. We have the reflexive property, the symmetric property, the transitive property, and finally the distributive property. All of these are meant to be a cheat sheet, so we're not going to go over them right now. So head on to that next page. It says properties and proof for honors. So the first property we are going to talk about is addition. So if A equals B, then what? So the goal of all of these properties is to keep everything balanced. Okay, that is our overall goal. So if A equals B, which means A and B are the same thing, then if we add a random value C, we also have to add it to B. So if we add a certain amount to A, we have to add that same amount to B so that each side is still balanced. Then we have subtraction. If A equals B, then if we are subtracting something, we have to subtract that same amount from both sides of the equation to keep it balanced. All right, next we have multiplication. If A equals B, then we have A times C equals B times C. So we have to multiply by the same amount on both sides. You could also see this as A parentheses C equals B parentheses C, because remember, parentheses means we are multiplying those two terms together. Now, for division, if A equals B and C is greater than 0, because remember, we can't divide by 0. A divided by C equals B divided by C. You divide both sides by the same amount, but it has to be greater than 0 because we cannot divide by 0. Next we have substitution. If A equals B, so here A and B equal the same thing. So if that's true, B can replace A in any equation. Remember, with substitution, you are replacing one thing with another. So here we would replace B anywhere there is an A. Next we have distributive. The distributive property is you take what is in front of the parentheses and you are multiplying it inside that parentheses. So here, A times B plus C is the same as A times B plus A times C. So all we did was take the value outside and multiply it to the inside. Next we have combining like terms. If A plus A plus A equals B, then we have 3A equals B. So all three of those A's are on the same side, so we can combine them since they have the same variable, and it is still equal to B because we did not change the value of what was there. Now, these next three might be new to you. You might have not heard them before. We will learn a lot more about them later on, but for now we're going to go into the basics. The reflexive property is if you have something, A, and it is equal to that same thing, A. So for an example, if you have a pencil, that's always going to be a pencil, so it's equal the same thing. If you have a side, and it shares a side with another thing, those are the same side, so they're the same. The symmetric property. If A equals B, then B has to equal A. They can change their place, but they still equal the same thing. Next, we have the transitive property. If A equals B and B equals C, then A has to equal C. Because A and B are the same value, and we take that same value B and it's equal to C, all three of those things are the same value. If you have any questions over the properties, please leave a comment in Google Classroom so that I can help you. Next, our definition for what we're doing today. A proof. So a proof is an argument that uses logic, definitions, and properties previously proven statements to show that a conclusion is true. Okay? It is important to know that part of writing a proof is just giving justifications to show that every step is valid. Now, your first step is always going to be called a given. Always. So, name the property illustrated in the statement. If I say the measure of angle R equals the measure of angle T, and the measure of angle T equals the measure of angle P, then the measure of angle R equals the measure of angle P. Okay, I know that was a lot of words. So the measure of angle R equals the measure of angle T. So T and R are the same amount. But then we also have that T has the same amount as P. So angle T and angle P are the same amount. Since angle T was used in both, R and P also must be equal. This is the transitive property. Okay, if this line segment NK equals line segment BD, then line segment NK equals line segment BD. Actually, looking at this now, these are supposed to be switched. Okay, so cross those out. This should say BD, and this should say NK. Okay, so go ahead and make that fix. So if line segment NK equals line segment BD, then line segment BD equals line segment NK. This is the symmetric property. Okay, so even if you flip their placement, they have the same value. All right, now I want to add a different definition for a proof real quick, just because proofs are something that are hard for people to understand sometimes. A proof is just a way that we explain a certain conclusion is true. So it's nothing super fancy. It is just, can you tell me what you are doing each step to get to your final answer? So for example, in this next problem, we are given 2 times x plus 3 equals 8. We need to prove that x equals 1. So let's write a proof. In a proof, there are usually 2 columns. Your first column is your statements. Your second column is your reasons. Some of these will be filled out for you. Some of them may not be. But your first step, the first statement you always have is always going to be whatever is given to you. Okay, then how do we go from step 1 to step 2? That is what we are trying to figure out. How do we go from 2 times x plus 3 equals 8 to x plus 3 equals 4? Take a second to think about it. Okay, now that you've had a second to think, you should have said division. Okay, we use the division property here. We divided by 2 on both sides of this equation. For the next one, we need to figure out how do we go from step 2 to step 3. Take a second, think about what you could do to finish solving this. If you said subtraction, you would be correct. We subtracted 3 from both sides of the equation. Now, we did prove that x equals 1. And this time, it only took us 2 steps. We had a reason for division, and we had a reason for subtraction. That is how simple 2-column proofs are. If you have any questions, make sure to leave a comment so that I can respond to you. As soon as you're finished writing, go ahead and flip it over to the back side. All right, use the properties to state the reasons for each step of the following equations. Match the property with the example. Okay, let's do 5 minutes to work these out. All right, you are going to need to pause the video. I don't want it to be super long, so I'm going to go ahead and keep going, but do take your 5 minutes and pause the video. All right, first one we're going to start with, the reflexive property of congruence. The reflexive property states that the same thing is equal to the same thing. So here, that is letter G. We have triangle ABC is equal to triangle ABC. Those are the same thing. Next, we have the symmetric property of equality. Symmetric property says if A equals B, then B has to equal A. So the same thing, but flipped. So in this case, C, if X equals Y, then Y equals X. Next, we have number 3, the transitive property of equality. The transitive property says if A equals B and B equals C, then A equals C. Okay, so let's look through these. What did you come up with? I see letter F. If A equals 2 and B equals 2, then A equals B. These 2's are what they have in common, so then A has to equal B. Next, we have the substitution property of equality. This says whatever you whatever A equals B, then B can be replaced in any equation where A is. So in this case, I see letter B. If x equals 2 and x plus y equals 5, then I can plug in 2 for x to finish solving. Next, we have the subtraction property of equality. Subtraction says when you subtract something from the left, you also must subtract it from the right side. So in this case, I see letter D. I subtract 6 from 10 to get 4. Next, we have the addition property. Whatever you add to the left side, you also must add to the right side so that it stays balanced. So I see letter E, x equals y, and so x plus 5 equals y plus 5. We added 5 to both sides. So lastly, we have the division property. So that one must go with A. If 12x equals 144, then x equals 12. So we divided by this 12 on both sides to get x equals 12. If you have any questions on how we did that, please leave a comment so I can respond to you. Or you can ask me in class tomorrow. Either way is fine. All right, last example we're going to do together is number 8. Okay, remember your first statement. This first statement, this is always going to be given. So we are given that negative 2x plus 3 over 2 equals 8. Okay, so then what we have to do, how do we go from step A to step B? What did they do from step A to step B? So you have to look at what's different. In this case, I see this 2. That 2 is being multiplied. So I'm going to say this step is multiplication. Next, we look from step B to step C. What did we do to get from B to C? In this case, I see that they took the 2's and they distributed them. So this is the distributive property. Okay. Next, we go from C to D. How do we go from step C to step D? In this case, I see this 3. We subtracted 3 from both sides to get 13. So the step here is subtraction. All right, now we're down to our final step. How do we go from step D to step E? So in this case, I see that we divided by negative 4. So this would be division. Now, our goal was to prove this final statement. We did that by doing all of these steps. All right, so your assignment for the rest of class. You have 2 more problems to do. Okay, so you're going to do these 2 problems. As soon as you finish these 2 problems, you can do one of 2 things. The first option is that you can go ahead and open your Delta Math for the week, and you can go ahead and get started on this section. Don't work on any other section because we will be learning other stuff on Thursday and Friday. The second option is also in this packet that you have. You have your test review. Your first test of the 9 weeks is on Wednesday, so that you can go ahead and study with this packet. It is 2 pages, both front and back. You do not have to work on this because we will be working on it in class tomorrow. It is an option if you choose. If you have any problems, let me know. You can send me an email. You can leave me a message in Google Classroom. Make sure you have finished these notes, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.